Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to What's Up With That, the show that brings you interesting people, places, cultures, and subcultures here in the South Bay, the San Francisco Bay Area, the state of California, and beyond. And tonight, what's up with Peace Action West? What's up with activism in our community and beyond? And what happens, honestly, what happens when you don't speak your mind and you decide to remain silent? Well, I can tell you what my mother always told me. She said, Andrew, you need to be involved in what you believe in. And she carried that with her, so I did myself through all my years. She was my mentor, and she continues to do that. She works for Seniors' Rights. She has refused to be silent. Well, look at America today. What are we doing? We're sitting back. We're watching Iraq get blown up. We feel helpless. But do we do anything? Well, not a lot of us. Tonight we have a group that is celebrating 50 years of activism, 50 years of making a difference in our community. Please welcome from Peace Action West, the political director, Rebecca Griffin. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, how did your organization get started?
Well, we actually got started back in 1957 with a group of people who were concerned about the nuclear weapons threat, particularly after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There was a lingering sense that this was an enormous threat, that we needed to take some action to stop it. So a group got together, included very prominent activists like Eleanor Roosevelt, Martin Luther King, Dr. Spock, who
The big ones.
The big ones, right, who were working to raise awareness about the threat of nuclear weapons. And the organization later merged with a group called the Freeze, which was more of a grassroots group that was working to generate voter activism around nuclear weapons.
Okay.
And over time, we've evolved to bring other issues into our mission, things like diplomacy and military aid.
And did this start here in the Bay Area, or did it start, was it a group that has its roots in the Bay Area?
Well, I believe it started mostly on the East Coast, but it spread pretty quickly to chapters throughout the country. And our office here in California grew out of a Sane Freeze chapter that was here.
Okay. So, how did you get involved in this? Because here we have this, you know, it's a lot of work. So what brought you to where you are right now?
Well, when I was in college, I was actually a music major, but I started thinking more about getting involved in social justice work and political organizing, and I moved out to California about 6 months after the war in Iraq broke out. So obviously I was very upset, I was outraged, I wanted some way to channel how I was feeling, and so I found a job ad for Peace Action West and started working as a field organizer, and 5 years later I'm the political director and still keeping up the fight.
So as political director, what are your duties?
Well, it's a wide range of things. I'm responsible for oversight of our issue campaigns. So there are issues, for example, right now we're working on ending the war in Iraq, promoting nuclear disarmament, making sure that our issue campaigns are carried out, and that means writing email action alerts, writing for our blog. It means working with other organizations to build coalitions, meeting with congressional staff and members of Congress to move our legislative agenda. It's a lot of work, but it's rewarding work.
And it's probably when you wake up in the morning, at least you know that you're somebody who's making a difference.
Absolutely, and as you were mentioning, it's overwhelming and they're huge problems, but to wake up every day and go into an environment where you're surrounded by people who are talented and passionate and committed and are really working to change our foreign policy, it makes it a lot easier just to keep moving forward. Okay,
so I'm going to take the role of the newbie, okay? I have just come out of college and I'm disenfranchised with Iraq. And personally, and I don't mind going on camera, I was from the beginning, and I just don't see where American imperialism fits in any spectrum. But you know, who am I to say? Our country has allowed it to go on, so I'm mad. Okay, so I already got a chip on my shoulder. I come to you and I say, you know what? What can I do? I feel like I'm just a person with a voice. I can stand on the corner and scream, and I've done that before. But you know, there needs to be some. You know, where's the beef, right? You know?
Right. Well, a lot of the work that we do is to bring people in to an effort that's bigger than themselves. You know, a lot of people are frustrated, but if they're frustrated in isolation, it's not going to be as politically effective. So what we do is work to bring people together and magnify the voices that are in opposition to the policies like the war in Iraq, and to make sure that we're channeling it in the right way. Because it can feel cathartic to stand on the corner and scream, but you know, is there a decision maker who's hearing you do that? And so we want to make sure that we're channeling this frustration, channeling people's energy into communicating with the people in Congress who are actually making decisions about whether the war in Iraq continues. So, you know, we have campaigns like our No Soldier Left Behind campaign, where people can get involved in ways where they're communicating directly with their member of Congress and their member of Congress's staff. They're sending a message directly to the presidential campaigns about ending the war in Iraq.
So I come in, you might do what, like put me in a committee, or do you have a program that might teach me how to become an activist? Is that part of it?
We have people who work within our office, and then we also have something through our website, peaceactionwest.org. We have an activist toolkit, and that's something that you can go online, you can download, and it gives you an outline and tips on how to do all kinds of actions, whether it's to go do a lobby meeting with your member of Congress, to go do what we call bird dogging, which is where you go to an event where a candidate is speaking and ask them tough questions about issues. We even have training videos that people can watch on how to do that.
So it's accessible to everybody.
Right, and what we want to do is put these resources out there because we have this information and make it as easy as possible, because people are busy, they have a lot going on, and we want to make it really easy for people to channel their feelings about this in
and I think a lot of times, you know, people really just don't know what to do. You know, and I did see on your webpage there was a little kit. I thought that's really a cool thing. You know, I can do that. You know? All right, we're gonna take a short break, and we'll be back with Peace Action West. So stick with it.
It's estimated that as many as 33 million people worldwide are still living with HIV. In the United States, we believe that as many as 60,000 are newly infected with the disease every year. So AIDS is still with us, but so is the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. And we are still here until one day, no one, anywhere, becomes infected with this terrible disease. As long as one of us has HIV, we are all living with the disease, and we still need you to be with us too.
We're at a crucial stage with energy usage. Prices are just too high. We need to cut consumption, and we need alternatives. That's what drove us to attempt the first static electricity-powered home. Static cells under the carpet collect energy and transfer it as needed throughout the house.
Faster! Faster! Water's getting cold!
Success has been elusive. It hasn't been everything we'd hoped. But besides making the house itself more energy efficient, the smartest thing we did, the bright spot, if you will, is that we equipped the house with Energy Star products, which use less juice and save money. Static electricity may not be viable, but hey, we've taken a step toward the future. Our future. Anyone can make their home more energy efficient.
Good night, sweetie.
Good night, Mommy.
Hi, I'm back here with Rebecca from Peace Action West, and you know, I've been kind of hinting at this subject since we started, but I really want to talk about it because I'm as concerned as everybody else. What is going on in Iraq, and why are we still there?
There are a lot of reasons. I mean, there are a lot of challenges that we're facing right now in terms of ending the war in Iraq, and I think the main challenge that we're dealing with is how to go about ending the war in Iraq. Because my impression from talking to the public, from talking to congressional staff, is that there's a building consensus that this needs to change, that we need a new policy in place. But there are hurdles in Congress in terms of actually getting things passed. There's the question of what does withdrawal from Iraq look like, and that kind of substantive debate hasn't really happened yet.
So that is a big issue.
Absolutely, and that's something that we want to bring the debate to another level about taking ownership over the situation in Iraq and actually having a solution-oriented plan to stabilize Iraq, you know, not with the idea that it's going to be easy or it's going to be perfect, but that there are steps we can put in place to actually deal with the situation effectively. And starting to talk about that, but there's been a lack of momentum right now, which is part of the reason why people like me and like a lot of other people in this country, are feeling very frustrated at
Yeah.
the lack of progress.
Why haven't so many more Americans gotten up and, you know, spoke up against Iraq?
Well, one factor is certainly the fact that the media coverage of the war in Iraq has declined significantly when you compare the minutes in primetime news coverage that the war in Iraq gets compared to years past. There isn't as much attention on it right now.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity to change that in the context of the presidential and congressional elections, but that's one of the reasons why we're pushing really hard to convey that this is still the top of the agenda. But I think another part of that is that feeling of helplessness and frustration that some people are feeling, that number one, they don't know, how do they even tackle a problem as big as this if they're only one person? When they're not seeing a lot happening to end the war in Iraq, they wonder what difference it makes if they step up. And that's one of the reasons why we want to communicate to people the feeling of being a part of something bigger and working together to amplify the impact that we can have in speaking out. But understandably, people are frustrated, and we need to reach out to them and show them that there are ways that they can get involved, in ways that no matter what your political background is, no matter what your experience in activism is, there are really easy ways that you can make a difference by communicating about this to the policymakers in Washington, D.C.
And how much of this is a partisan issue? I mean, honestly, is that what it's come down to? Is that what we're throwing at each other now?
Well, it's
be the Republican and represent whatever. And
right. I mean, it's more partisan than it should be. I mean, I think, again, in terms of the feelings of the American people, it's not a strictly partisan issue. There are plenty of people who would identify as Republicans or independents who are strongly opposed to the war in Iraq, who favor a timeline for withdrawal, as well as Democrats. But I think part of where the partisanship has come in is the lack of movement in Congress, that it's turned into a political football that the parties are throwing back and forth, and they're losing touch with the facts on the ground and the fact that
it's getting all convoluted.
Right, that this is about...
That's what they want, though.
Right. I mean, we need to remind them this is about the human cost of the war, that, the lack of movement is impacting American lives and Iraqi lives, and it's costing billions of our tax dollars. That's why we want to keep the issue at the forefront, to work against that idea that it's just this battle between Democrats and Republicans about whose fault it is or who's right and who's wrong.
And it's a big battle because the media, I compare two medias that are so unique in the way that they show stories. And you have Fox, we've got to keep Fox in mind, and then you have CNN. And they have the same story, the exact same event, and it's played out completely different. And, it's getting Americans to see beyond the tube. And that's a whole other thing. So there's other things that you're involved in. There's a lot of things going on in the in the world. Iraq, of course, is at the forefront, but we have something right now. I don't know if you've even begun to prepare, but we had a Russian invasion of a country in Georgia. How are you preparing to deal with that issue? Now you're talking about the Soviets. That's a big country. It's not Iraq. This is These people have nuclear weapons,
Right, and it's something that we're keeping a close eye on, and looking forward into how Congress can deal with this. And it's something that we have already activated our members around to send that message to Congress that they need to be vigilant. And we're especially concerned about the Cold War rhetoric that's coming from both sides. This ideas of that we're abandoning relationships with Russia, that we're putting a missile defense installation in Poland, despite the fact that it's not strategic. There's no missile threat that they're protecting. They're being protected from, and that the Russians are obviously taken as a threat. So we are really concerned, especially about the need to turn down the Cold War rhetoric. And as an organization that prioritizes nuclear disarmament, we see the U.S. relationship with Russia as really critical, being that,
I would say
so. That we should be negotiating to reduce our nuclear arsenals bilaterally with Russia, that we should be working to clean up loose nuclear material in Russia. So those are big concerns that we have in terms of, again, a principle that as an organization we always stand behind, of using tough-minded diplomacy to deal with these problems and really toning down the saber rattling and the harsh rhetoric.
Yeah, it's going to happen again somewhere else, and it's kind of this, I always have this uneasy feeling that when something just starts to get kind of together something else comes up, and I think we got to remind people that they got to keep talking and keep opening up this, like you said, diplomacy. Nuclear weapons, big issue.
Yes.
You know, like you said, this was what was the thing that founded your group. What is the situation with the nuclear issue abroad? I mean, we hear about Pakistan, and Pakistan, people are very afraid about Pakistan. What do you do when you deal with countries like that?
Well, there are a number of things, and one of our priorities that we want to focus on right now is having the U.S. take a really positive leadership role in terms of nuclear disarmament within the international community. One of the first steps has been stopping plans to develop new nuclear weapons within the United States, which is something that we've successfully cut funding for every time the Bush administration has asked for it. But now we're in a position where we're in a place where we're looking forward to having a new president and a new Congress and looking at the more proactive, positive steps that the U.S. can take to be a leader, because, again, these issues need to be dealt with tough-minded diplomacy and with leadership by example. So by the U.S. working to reduce its nuclear arsenal, to abide by international treaties, to ratify the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, these are the sort of steps that need to be taken to go into the international community and deal with tense situations around the nuclear weapons threat.
All right, well, hold that thought. We'll be taking a quick break, and we'll be coming right back to talk to Rebecca.
Have you ever wondered how a television show is put together? Do you want to know what goes on behind the scenes of a TV production? Now is your chance to discover for yourself. KMVT Community Television offers studio production workshops for adults and youth. Learn the basic skills needed to create a television production, including camera operation, floor direction, audio engineering, technical directing, tape operations, and directing. It's a great way to learn TV production. No previous experience is necessary, and most of all, this training will provide you with the foundation to produce your own show. Register now and learn more about TV and video productions by calling KMVT at 650-968-1540 or visit the website at www.kmvt15.org.
We welcome all transgender individuals, male to females, female to males, cross-dressers, drag queens, kings. Any and all are welcome to come and visit us and sit down, talk with us, learn a few things about each other, and enjoy a good night.
Hi, I'm back here with Rebecca Griffin from Peace Action West, and we were just talking a little bit about the nuclear situation. You know, I did kind of mention Pakistan because a lot of people are worried that this is something that's going to be a little bit different because we're not dealing with leaders in terms of so much detente, but possibly a religious issue. How do you address something like that? How do you address something when it becomes at a little different level?
Well, I think that, you know, we need to think about the fact that most leaders of these countries are thinking in their national interest, you know, and in terms of, you know, we hear a lot about things like this with Iran, that, you know, that they're going to launch a nuclear attack on another country. You know, first off, of course, they don't have a nuclear weapon at this point, and
but they portray their president as like a nutcase.
Right, absolutely, you know, and, you know, not to say that he is a good guy or anything, but he's not insane, right? I mean, he's operating within national interest, and when you're being threatened by a country that has nuclear weapons, you know, it's obviously, you know, understandable to feel that kind of threat, but they're not suicidal. I mean, anyone in these governments knows that if they were to launch a nuclear attack against Iran, that there would be serious consequences. So, you know, I don't think that the religious factor is something that is something that gets played up a lot as a fear factor, and I don't think it's a major concern in dealing with these issues.
Okay, what are some of the biggest accomplishments that have come from your organization? 50 years, that's a long time.
It is a long time, and, you know, over the years we've had big accomplishments, things like getting the Limited Test Ban Treaty passed. And
well, that's a big one.
That was definitely a big one, and one of the accomplishments.
Say,
right.
Go right on.
Right, exactly. And, you know, more recently, I think it's really important to highlight some of the successes we've had now, considering how frustrated people have been with the current political climate is that, again, the Bush administration has tried to take our nuclear weapons policy in a dangerous new direction, despite the way that they've manipulated fear effectively in a lot of ways to get support for their policies. We've really had bipartisan opposition to every one of their nuclear weapons programs. We've cut funding for them every single time, including this year with the Reliable Replacement Warhead program. And we also had, there were public hearings for a project called Complex Transformation, which was designed to revamp the entire nuclear weapons complex to be able to build more nuclear weapons at a projected cost of $150 billion over the next 20 years.
Billion.
Right, and working with other organizations that are concerned about these issues, we were able to generate over 150,000 public comments to the Department of Energy expressing how people felt about this program. And so it is a good indication that the concern is there, that people are active, if they're getting the word out. So I think we have a tremendous opportunity and a way to start looking forward with a more proactive foreign policy vision as opposed to responding to the Bush administration. What are the major things that we want to see accomplished with U.S. foreign policy?
Well, unfortunately, our society, again, has always been reactive. I mean, not always, but 9 out of 10 instead of being reactive. And I think Iraq's going to send a little different message, I think, hopefully. And I think really the future of this lies in the young people who are growing up through this. And so what do you say to the young people in America right now? What's your fix on that?
Well, I think like everyone, they really have an opportunity to express how they feel and to get involved in the political system, whatever way that they choose to do it. But that, that is the backbone of how, democracy works. And if you really look back at all of the significant accomplishments that have happened in this country, whether it's for civil rights or women's rights or labor rights, it was through people getting together and, taking action as a group.
Right.
So
with the
encouraging
means
people.
that they had at the time.
Right. And it wasn't about having a lot of money or having a lot of traditional power.
Right.
It was about the power of the grassroots.
Right. And so with the internet now, though, we have the opportunity to mobilize so many more people, and that's the beauty of it when it's used, in the right way. Dangerous situations. Have you ever felt that there's been any dangerous situations that any of your members have been in?
For the most part, I'd say that most of our interactions are very respectful. I started out in the organization as a field organizer where I would knock on doors and just talk to people about these issues and work to get them involved, and did it all over California and New Mexico and all these different areas.
You never had anybody chew you out when you got to the door?
Occasionally, but most people were very respectful and actually respected the fact that we were out there even if they didn't agree with us. So I think for the most part people are willing to engage in a respectful debate about the issues.
One of those people from California here.
And that's something that we really strive to do as an organization, is to work with an approach that that can allow that kind of dialogue and appeal to a wide range of people and not necessarily alienate people, that we're bringing them in because regardless of whatever labels people feel comfortable sticking on themselves, I really think that the issue positions that we represent and the policy we want to see does represent the interests of the vast majority of the American people.
Right. So in America, and you do go all across America, and I was reading your blog, what are some of the areas that you find to be an extreme challenge for your group? What are some of the little pocket areas?
Well, we've definitely been targeting, at least on the war in Iraq, some of the swing moderate Democrats and Republicans who have not been voting in favor of timelines. And as we talked about before the show, I was in Utah just about a week ago working on a Democratic representative who, despite having a D next to his name, has a 27% voting record on our congressional scorecard last year. And this is in a state that's one of the reddest states in the country that still supports President Bush. And then there's this core of people who are just really committed and, really want to see some positive change happen. And, and it's interesting because we work to, one of the things about this kind of work is an evolving learning process of what is the approach that we can use, what common ground can we find with this person to at least get some sort of movement and establish a relationship where we're getting them to move in our direction. Even if it's much more slowly than we want, it's still more progress than we would have if we weren't activating people in that community.
And how about like the Deep South? Is that a same kind of issues, or?
Well, we work in the western half of the U.S., so a lot of that area we don't work in. We do have a national network where there are other affiliates in different states, but there are a lot of areas that are particularly challenging, though one of the great things about the West and the opportunities we have is that it is trending more progressive, and there are a lot of opportunities there to build on that.
Yeah, it's becoming much more savvy. Other people got off their horses and decided to do something. Okay, we have very little time left. Tell me, what was your most memorable moment? What has been your most memorable moment with Peace Action West?
Most memorable moment with Peace Action West. There have definitely been a lot of them. One of them I will say that sticks out is I led a group of organizers to go to Fresno when I was first at Peace Action. And I was going door to door, and one of the doors I knocked on was a young woman who had returned from a tour of duty in the Middle East and was starting to question what was going on, and just said she was there, but she didn't really understand what she had been doing there, and was starting to think about getting politically active, had never written to a member of Congress. And she was so moved by our conversation and motivated to take action that she even, her little son came over and got $5 out of his piggy bank so that they could give me money to support the work that we were doing. And she wrote a letter to her member of Congress asking him to help end the war in Iraq. So that's one that definitely sticks with me.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, but with groups like you, I'm sure that somewhere down the line, people are going to understand that it's better to get along than not to get along. And so thank you very much. To our viewing audience, get involved, be active. Call Peace Action West. Make yourself known. Silence is death, and it's the truth. And we're seeing it played out right now. And to our viewing audience, as always, if you're walking down the street and you see something interesting and you wonder to yourself, hey, what's up with that? Well, tune into our show, What's Up With That, and maybe you'll find exactly what you're looking for. We'll see you next week on What's Up With That. Good night, everybody.